I finished cleaning and preparing all the parts for the printer mechanism. I've made a replacement roller, exactly the same process I used on the first repair, and again it's come out quite nicely. I did bead blast the shaft along the centre section where the rubber roller sits, so it's nicely bonded onto the guide. All the shafts cleaned up extremely nicely. There's no real wear of any significance on this printer. It's in much better condition than the first one. All the bearings have cleaned up very nicely, so they were very sticky before, but now they're all very free to rotate, and all the other parts are now nice and clean. So as I say, no real wear, all in good condition. The rubber mounts at the front are also in good condition, so no need to replace those. Spirals cleaned up well, so no real wear on that. The print head support and its shaft are also in good condition, no real wear in the bearings, so that's nice and free. Paper guide, again cleaned up nicely. I polished this up with some Nervous number 2 and that's come up extremely nice and clean and clear. So the entire thing's looking in good condition. Even the fingers for the paper grounding are in good condition. I can see from the marks on them that this was incorrectly adjusted, so I'll readjust that once we've reassembled the printer. I'll need to do that anyway because we've got a different diameter rubber roller. I've got a new belt to fit, so same size belt as I fitted to the last one. So I'm now ready to start reassembly. I won't show this on camera, it's exactly the same process as for the first one. So we'll get all this put together and then we can move on to reassembling the rest of the printer. So that's the printer mostly fully assembled. I've just got to put the top cover on. Before I do that, I want to just double check that the clutch is working. So I'll just zoom you in so you can see the clutch, and I've got it hooked up to the bench power supply. So I'll just get you zoomed in. Okay, so we're looking at the clutch here. It's the silver cylinder on the right, and it should move across to the right when I apply power. So I'll turn the supply on, turn it off. Now you can see each time I turn it on and off, the clutch is moving, so that's working fine. The next thing is to adjust the height of the release lever. So if you recall from the previous repair on the first printer, there is an adjuster under here. So there's an Allen screw. You won't want to see it on the camera, but right under in the center there's an Allen headed screw, and if you screw that in and out, what it effectively does is it raises and lowers the fingers that are on the underside of the roller. So unfortunately you can't really see it that clearly, but if I engage the Allen key, so the Allen key is now in that screw, and what I can now do is turn it in and out. I'm looking for the fingers to just release from the roller when I move this lever down. So when I put it all the way down, the fingers should be up and touching the roller, and when I move this down, I don't know if you can see it, but they're just starting to move, and they're moving enough just to release the tension on the paper. And that's all it needs to do. It doesn't need to be a lot of force, and this should move fairly easily. Shouldn't need a lot of force, and that's in the right place. Also, when you fit this lever, so this is in two parts. You've got the metal part and then you've got the moving clear window. So that fits over there, and then there are some cams and catches on the side of the white piece. So when you move it all the way forward, this is normally captive under part of the case on the printer, but when you move this back, this is now captive underneath little tabs on the white lever, so that will not raise now, although it will allow you to pivot this piece up. And when you move it all the way up, there's a double cam arrangement, so you've got this lever will release, and this cam at the back uses this vertical section to move the effectively control the position, the forward and aft position, if you like, of the clear windows. So if we raise this, you'll see that this cam initially pushes back, and then it will engage at the front edge and it will push the window forward. So it's now pushed all the way forward, and it gives you plenty of clearance to get the paper in and out. And then when you push this back down, the cam at the back pushes the window carrier back towards the rear, and it relocks it. So that's how it should work. If it's not doing that, then it's more than likely the screw underneath the centre is not properly adjusted. So as you can see, this is now working fine. We'll try running it through a complete cycle to make sure it does what it's supposed to. I'll just take this out of the way. It doesn't need to be here for this to actually work. So we'll move that, and what we should see is the entire carriage should start to move across once we engage the clutch. The head should be lowered. It prints when it moves in a single direction, so it prints on the way across to the left. The head should then be raised, and it should return while feeding the paper forward. So what I'll do is, if I start rotating this, and if you do this, make sure you only rotate the motor in one direction. If you rotate it backwards, you will damage the print mechanism or the print head. So I'll start turning it, and you can see I can turn it as long as I want. Let's bring this forward a bit, and nothing will happen until the clutch is engaged. If I move the clutch across, so this is the same as the solenoid being energized, you'll see that within a full turn this starts to move across, and also this shaft in the center rotates to lower the print head onto the paper. It then moves across. This is where it's doing the printing, and at the same time this spiral is moving, and it's driving the roller drive gear, that's this one, into its start position. It's not turning the rubber roller yet, it's slipping on this clutch here, and this clutch is holding the roller still. Carries on turning till it gets to the end, and as it approaches the end, this shaft will start to rotate to lift the print head off the paper. So it's now starting to rotate, and at the same time as we move back, this spiral shaft through these gears will cause the rubber roller to rotate, driven through this clutch, which will then engage, and this clutch will start to slip to allow the roller to turn. So the head is now fully raised. We're moving back. The paper roller is turning, and then as we get towards the end, you'll see the head is put into its rest position, which is kind of halfway between the up and down position, and then the drive will move into its idle position, so the motor can carry on spinning, but the print cycle is complete. So it all works together very nicely. You can see it's working as it should. It's not taking much force to make this work, so I can finish reassembling this, which is just really refitting this top cover. And then this is ready to go back into the machine. So next thing is I'll get the chassis onto the bench. We'll have a quick look at that before we start to reassemble it. Chassis is all cleaned up. That's come up very nicely. Extremely good condition. Even the rubber is nice and soft, so I can leave this one in place. In the previous printer, this had gone rock hard and I had to replace it, but I can leave this intact. The two plastic mounting supports are fine, they're not broken. Did find a sheared bolt off a calculator inside this. I was a bit concerned these might have been damaged, but they seem fine, so that's good news. So I can now start to reassemble this. The first thing to go in is the rear cover. I've repaired this, it had a broken boss on it, and I've also cleaned and polished this so it's nice and presentable, and this just bolts in, so it's just a case of putting the screws in that hold this down to the chassis. there is a mount at the end for the cables. I have spent some time cleaning the cables as well. These, as in the previous calculator, kind of turned a horrible sticky black gooey mess, so I've cleaned these up, and again they've come up extremely nice and clean. So I get this fitted and then we'll move on from there. I've got the rear panel bolted back on. I've refitted the transformer and the relay, so they all went back in reverse order in the way I took them out. I've reclipped the loom to the chassis. If you recall, I left the rubber mount attached to the chassis, so that's already in place. What I can do now is drop the printer into the chassis. So this just fits in, and then it's just really a case of lining it up with the vent at the back. That slots into place like that, and then there are 2 screws that come through the bottom of the chassis to bolt this into place. So I'll get this attached. The next thing I'll do is then reattach the wiring at the back. I won't show that on in the video, and then once I've done that, I can refit the power supply. So that's everything refitted now, apart from the print head and the main board. So I'll get the main board refitted now and get it reconnected. We can then connect the printer to the calculator and see if it comes to life. I haven't tried running this one yet, and I'll leave the print head off for now and just see if it's capable of trying to print, and if it is, we can then turn our attention to the print head. I've refitted the main board to the printer. I've done the usual static testing on this, looking for shorts or anything obviously wrong. The other thing I found was one suspect joint, so I redid that. Other than that, it seems fine. I've checked the free rotation of the actual print mechanism to make sure it spins freely, and it does. The sensor board is now tight, so everything's tightened up. It's got a new belt fitted. I've adjusted the tension on the belt, double checked all the connections. Everything seems fine. Very minimal amount of lubrication on just the bearings for the print head itself. The clutch on this was a bit sticky, so what I did was connect it to a bench power supply that was programmed to cycle on and off. I just cycled it on and off probably about 1,000 times, and it's now freed up. It's nice and free, moves quite freely. Other than that, it seems fine. I haven't refitted the print head yet. It doesn't need the print head to go through the motions. It doesn't know the print head's not there, it doesn't sense it, but it does sense the paper. So I fitted a piece of scrap paper just to fool it into thinking there's a paper reel in there, otherwise it won't do anything. And what we can do now is power it up. Now, it hasn't been powered up for decades, so fingers crossed it will come to life. So I've got it plugged into the calculator. I'll power the calculator up, wait for the calculator display to come on to make sure that this isn't messing with it, and then we can power up the printer. Okay, the calculator display is now on. We can power the printer up, just the motor should spin up. So it's always a bit nerve-wracking the first time it's been rebuilt. If anything goes wrong, it could destroy the print head or some other parts. I have spun it quite a few times by hand, but the first time it moves at speed is always a bit of a risk. So we'll power this up, fingers crossed. Okay, so nice gentle whirring sound. The magic smoke still seems to be inside the unit. And we'll try feeding some paper. So paper feed works. And what I'm going to do now is select the X register, and I'm going to press the print key on the calculator, and it should go through the motions to print a single line. Press it again. Okay, we'll try the 2 other registers, and that seems to be fine as well. And I'm going to press the list key with just the X register selected, and it will go through now, and it should stop when it runs out of paper. Which it has done. So okay, that looks promising. It's going through all the right motions. Ignore the text on here, that's what was already on the paper. So this now appears to be at least superficially working fine. We don't know if it's trying to drive the print head yet. I could put a scope on here, of course, and see if it's actually doing anything, but what I'm going to do before that is turn my attention to the print head. So in the next video we'll rebuild this print head. I'll show you how I attached the new cables I had made up. The print head itself is in fairly poor state, you probably can't see it, but there's a lot of corrosion and dirt on there, so I will need to clean that up, replace the cable, and hope it will start printing. So that's for the next video. Any comments, please let me know.